Alright, draft physics video. Yes, the John Wayne Gacy look-alike or friend of or admirer of the William Gelfand has made a video that Hoffaday liked, which is funny. I haven't watched it all, but it's just absolute rubbish. But anyway, so we'll just play it. Just so bad. So it says in the description, which none of this will happen in this 3-minute video, of course. Gary claims that no one has made any counter-arguments to his arguments. Well, clearly, yes, there's a bunch of arguments I've made about the consequences of lensing, yes, and how those consequences have to exist. And if they don't exist, you have to explain why they don't exist. But in actuality, his arguments have not only failed completely, I guess failed in the sense of what? You don't acknowledge the existence of an argument against your God. Oh, I get it. In addressing the topic at hand, well, again, you're the one who isn't addressing it, but have not even referred to anything coherent whatsoever. So the consequences of a lens, like I said, there's lots of consequences, as I'm trying to point out, in terms of focus issues, and the fact that the whole point of the lens is that it's taking something in one little location and filling a whole area with that location, meaning that everything else doesn't get seen by inside the lens. Nothing else is visible. Anyway, so let's play it. Right? It's not the only thing to add. I think in one of his sock accounts he had promised that he was going to do the Eddington experiment. So I'm sure he didn't do that, because I'm sure he doesn't even understand any of this physics, and I don't think he even understood how difficult the Eddington experiment really is in some respects.
Good morning. This is William Gelfand.
Yes, hiding in a garage. Probably like a waste treatment plant, looking at those transformers. Big garage. So either like cuts grass, or, yeah, or he shovels shit in Texas. It definitely looks like Texas.
And I'm doing a response video to DraftScience, aka in Bedlam.
Yes, and you're aka a pedophile who admires people who torture children. Yes, you're really cool. And, right, and you're the one playing the spooky music behind your own video, because what you need musical accompaniment, organ music. It's probably something else Gacy liked.
So his argument for why the photographs.
No, I have lots of arguments. So first, this is just such a straw man, right? I mean, the weak straw. Find the least argument I've made, the least of the arguments, the one I just glanced at, just mentioned as a, hey, it's also, you gotta, it's a truth that these photos aren't really photographs, they're composites made out of different source information that are combined. Actual different satellite images taken at different times from different locations, and they're combined into an image. Now, that doesn't bother you any, fine. I mean, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I mean, I'm sure there's circumstances where you wouldn't want that to be the roadmap you had to drive by, or the surgeon that was going to operate on you, you wouldn't want him using composites.
I guess okay, so it's not really.
So I guess he's saying these are good images or something. This is just so convincing. I mean, this totally is convincing. The other thing that's interesting, these images are always blue shifted, and they're always in the sense that they're either white compared to the yellow thing in the middle, which doesn't make any sense. And the argument's often made that the further away things go, the more red shifted they are. And so these are supposed to be objects that are twice as far away. This is supposed to be twice as far away as that, and yet it's blue shifted. and even little contradictions like that, no, fuck that. That doesn't bother us any. Yeah, no, we don't. Consistency, consistency. And again, this lens is totally unspherical, so there's no symmetry, but there is symmetry in the sense that it has arcs. Okay, so these two arcs are perfectly symmetrical in that sense, but otherwise no symmetry. And yet there's these blobs, and you're saying, well, what's causing the blobs? I mean, obviously there's enough symmetrical gravity in this arc to create an arc. So that has to have symmetrical gravity. Well, what causes these abrasions from the symmetry, why the point sources? Why the lens wouldn't do that? There has to be a reason why there's some unevenness there. So what's breaking the symmetry? And how do you break the symmetry without breaking this line? If there's more gravity here, or here, or here, why wouldn't that break the line?
Top photographic film, but it is a photograph. Okay.
It is a photograph. So again, this is a remark I made as a side remark to some guy who said, well, I agree with you that lensing has problems, but how do you explain those images? And I pointed out that I would explain them as likely to be some sort of explosion event, some supernova or something. Something was close to it and it got pushed. And that was one of my explanations. And I also pointed out that some of these images, we don't know how much they've been manipulated by software. And as I pointed out in the article I was reading, okay, that the image they showed had nothing to do with the article, and the image they showed when I looked it up was actually a composite from two satellite sources, one in infrared and I don't know, the other was radio or something. So there are two different sources from two different positions, superimposed in some way, blended, and there has to be software to do that blending. And so maybe some of this stuff is a function of those algorithms. But we don't see the source material. We don't get to see image A and image B in the two different forms, in radio waves and in ultraviolet. And we don't see what they're combining. But you're sure everything's up way above board. No shenanigans.
I'm taking a photograph right now.
Yeah, and they're not doing that though, right? So there's no reason to be suspicious if you said, okay, well, I'm taking a photograph right now and you're doing it masked, obscure vision, kind of useless actually, in terms of no real detail. Do you have your clown makeup on? I mean, you're off to go kill some children, torture them. I mean, you do have the same head profile as Gacy too, you're probably fat like Gacy, so that's really your thing, right? So yeah, I mean, obviously this information is there's a lack of information. So I'm just saying a computer program could say, okay, this is the blurry thing we're getting. This is kind of blurry, this pole here. Let's say the algorithm says every time you see a pole, try to make that into the head, and these are the arms, and these are its legs. It could make a human out of it. I'm just saying, depending on what this software is programmed to do, how it's programmed to try to find something, it can find things. It can make those things.
It doesn't matter if it's a photographic film or whether it's a digital image. It's a fucking photograph.
Well, again, it's not. So you want to claim it is? It's not a fucking photograph in any sense of the word. It's a composite. It's created out of pieces of information, and they're smashed together. Your video isn't doing that.
Okay, just stop it with the semantic.
Yeah, I didn't do any semantics, and again, this is the minor point of the points I'm making. I haven't made a single video where I said my primary argument is these are computer software images. It's on the list of things people should be critical of. They should at least wonder, when they're taking images from different locations at different times, and making an image out of that we it just seems rational to say is there any aggressive software manipulation taking place?
Bullshit that, it's not really a photograph, it's actually an image taken from space, that, taken from actual space.
Yeah, I'm all for that again. So I've already pointed out how they have satellites that they should be pointing at the sun, the edges of the sun, and getting, they could do the Eddington experiment every single day. They don't have to wait for an eclipse. They don't have to take images from two different locations. They don't have to do any of that nonsense. They just have to follow the sun, and they can see the shit getting lensed. I made that argument. You're ignoring that.
Right. And you can say, oh, they're digitally manipulated. Yeah, what they do is they convert different wavelengths, and they assign a color to it. Kind of like the way our brain does. Yeah, so that's the algorithm. It's not something.
Yeah. Okay. So you're so sure, and how do we know that you know the truth about how it's done? How aggressive the processing is? You're saying it's a one-to-one relationship. They just take the ultraviolet image and they take the other image, and they don't shrink anything because they were taken at different locations. They don't change anything or manipulate anything. No, it's just one-to-one, and it's all just not a single pixel is augmented. Bullshit.
Mysterious hocus pocus that nobody understands. No, it's a fucking algorithm.
Yeah, so now it's an algorithm. Again, if all you're doing is changing a frequency into a color, you don't need an algorithm for that.
Yeah, it's easy to understand what it does.
Yeah, it's easy to understand, and my argument is it completely idiotic to take an image like this and say, okay, this is the size of the lens. This is one lens. There's, I guess, a second lens here that's just coincidentally also lensing. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. There's no obvious inconsistency between these field objects, which are closer and further away. There's no inconsistency between these field objects and inside this object. So there's not like an obvious evacuation of the reality that's in the rest of the space. So again, it doesn't duplicate what a lens would do, a regular lens. And we're talking about a gravitational lens that has the inverse square as its slope. This lens has a tiny slope. The inverse square law slope is a sphere. It's round. It's a fucked up lens.
And you're not lying.
So he just hopped over that other image. So again, anytime, this is just the Nazi argument, or Stalin argument. If you're not a capitalist, then you're a commie. That's all this is. So because you apply a little bit of rational scrutiny and say, yeah, no, I'm not going to buy dark matter as anything other than what it is, something completely made up to fix mathematical problems. An idea that would never occur to anybody if they didn't have a math problem to solve. Completely made up. Invisible man mush. But no, I should really believe it because they believe it. I have to believe what they believe.
Okay. And if they were,
Okay, so, it's tinfoil hat to apply any scrutiny to people who make claims. And I'd argue the claim is rather almost extraordinary in terms of the lack of evidence. And the evidence would be demonstrated if they had some evidence of all these things that were getting annihilated by lensing. And there should be lots of places they can show the image where something's missing that should be there. And see that we could see it when we're on that side of the sun, in orbit, but we couldn't see it when it was over here. They should have images like that, where the object disappears because of the angle of the lens. That's the consequence of gravitational lensing being true. You haven't made a counter-argument to that that's at all reasonable.
The argument is that if you have a gravitational lens and there are stars behind it, then the light that's traveling...
So they're using the sun, which again is a really bogus in the sense that none of the lensed images just showed had anything to do with the sun. So solar lensing, especially with our own sun, is a lot more dicey because we're a lot closer to this object and the angle has to be stronger because of that proximity problem. So you'll never get like an Einstein ring from our sun. No hope. And all you're going to get is this little bit of a change in position.
If you think of the light traveling as a vector in 3 space, his argument is that that light never reaches the telescope because it gets bent at the last minute and misses.
I never said anything like that. It gets bent at the last minute and misses. What I said, let's go back to your image. The other previous, this image is a piece of shit. Why aren't the other one showing? There it is. What I said was, this is where you're going to see a star. Okay, for you to see it there, that means that this light that was going here, that would have somebody who was sitting in a little rocket ship over here and looked, he wouldn't see this star because the light that would have gone to him is now going here. And it doesn't matter about any kind of, there's no way you can make that change. This star will not be visible from this location, and it's just a fact. There's no way to make it visible. It's invisible from this location, if lensing is true. Halliday agrees with this point, and yet he sat there and thumbed this piece of shit video up. Amazing. I'll just replay some of it.
That light never reaches the telescope because it gets bent at the last minute and misses. But what he doesn't understand is that
no, what you don't understand, and again, why don't you just give us your qualifications if you're going to be this obnoxious and arrogant? What exactly, what do you know about physics? What lectures have you watched? Why don't you give me some evidence that you have some knowledge of any of this stuff? You're just a fucking troll, for fuck's sake. And you shouldn't even be part of this conversation, except asswipes like Halliday will reward trolls.
A star is a point source in 3 space, and it's actually emitting light, radiation in every direction.
So what? The direction that it was going, the light, the photons that are hitting my eye, they're from this screen, let's say, they're coming to hit my eye. Well, if something blocks the photons that just got to my eye, the ones going this way aren't going to get to my eye. The ones going some other way aren't going to get to my eye. Only the ones that were heading right for my eye are going to get to my eye. And if something changes their direction, I'm not going to see the screen unless I move my head. That's just a fact, fuckhead.
Yeah, it was. So the light that reaches the telescope is not really the vector that started out pointing directly at the telescope. No, it's another one.
Right, exactly. So this is just, so again, Halliday agrees with the point that this observer, the one here, isn't going to see this because the photons that were heading for this observer went here. So this observer's out of luck. He can't see this source because the photons are one group of photons. You can't have 2 groups of photons. There's only one group of photons. They got bent. They went here. They didn't go here. So to see this means somebody can't see this. Alright? That's just a fact. God, it's so fucking stupid. You're going to make this obnoxiously arrogant, video, and to be this fucking wrong.
Another vector slightly to the side, and it curves and it reaches the telescope. So no, the stars would not disappear.
Right. So, just contradicting what Halliday said in his video. So Halliday thumbs up, says like to a video that says exactly the opposite of what he contends to be the truth. Why? Oh, because it has something to do with being an asshole. Being a petty asshole.
As he claims. And also...
So again, there was no rational counter-argument for the fact that the consequence of seeing things you can't see, things behind other things, is that some things that aren't behind other things you won't be able to see. That's the consequence of lensing. It's not a free lunch. You don't get to see things you couldn't see, that are impossible to see, unless you steal the photons that were going somewhere else. And a lot of the time, we're going to be in the somewhere else position. The image that you were trying to see is end up going someplace else. There's going to be an Einstein ring, a light year that away. And for that Einstein ring a light year away, you're not going to be able to see the object. That's the price paid. Dumbass.
An explosion is like a point source because it emits radiation and energy in all directions at once. So if these images...
Again, and where in my videos have I said anything other than that? I've constantly talked about gravity being like a light bulb in reverse. I mean, it's been in almost all of my videos. It's the whole reason there's an inverse square law is that very fact, and I've pointed that out over and over in my videos. So what's the point of this nonsense? Like you're somehow correcting me or somehow edifying me on a fact I've iterated hundreds of times in my videos. It's got to be at least 100 times. I mean, if that isn't straw man bullshit, what is it?
These were actually explosions and not lensed images, then it would look like an explosion. It wouldn't look like a cross-section of an explosion. It would look like an explosion.
I was going to make a joke about him being Homer Simpson, and then he puts a Homer Simpson piece of nonsense in here. I don't know what the fuck. So he's saying there's no... So he's saying... So I guess Hothaday, we'll have to see if he agrees, Hothaday, that if some object was next to a supernova and a supernova novaed, that somehow it's not possible that that object would move at a different speed, a slower speed, and that it would spread as it moves away from the object. So this guy doesn't believe smoke rings are created by explosions like cannons or something. Let's see, what is a good example? Nuclear bombs do it. They create a ring of pressure, a pressure wave. It's a ring across the surface of the ground. What they do in the atmosphere is also quite similar, but that gets more complicated. This is no atmosphere in space. But the idea of rings being created is totally within the within a reasonable diagram of physics. I'm sure most physicists would concur that it's possible to even see a supernova by the fact that it will possibly leave a ring.
Explosion would look like an explosion. He doesn't understand that.
Yes, no, I don't think there's any evidence that it would look like an explosion at all, because that cloud has to keep emitting all this light, and there's no reason to think that cloud is going to emit light. So it's not like an atmosphere where there's oxygen and reactions and all that kind of stuff. There's no reason for the cloud to glow. All right, but there is reason for things that are already suns on fire that are getting moved for them to continue to be radiating light.
So it sounds to me like someone's talking shit again.
No, it seems you're fucking made out of shit. And like I said, I'm glad you made a video. I mean, it'd be even better if you do show your fucking scummy face. Show you so that you have a little bit more balls. So yeah, maybe you have a half a ball, but that's about it. Because yeah, I'm going to bury you in the end, you fucking creepy piece of shit. You're an obnoxious, ignorant asshole. You're the perfect definition of the scummy people that occupy this planet. Scummy retards who are totally underqualified. They don't do the work to open their fucking mouth and have an opinion. You just have opinions. You don't have any knowledge behind them at all. You're an ignorant, stupid, fucking, mouth-farting douche. So that's the end of his argument. The rest is drama. Look, black space. Music. Dinkly, dinkly, dinkly. So wishful thinking that this is an argument. So his video wasn't even 3 minutes and 38 seconds long. It was even less than that. I really hate this autoplay thing. Somebody ought to, might pass a law against it. Anyway. Yeah, so that's it. I've already made, yeah, okay, I mean, this could end up being a subject that's just, somebody has to do it, so I'm going to end up having to do it because nobody else seems to have any integrity whatsoever. But I mean, there's a ton of consequences that gravitational lensing being true creates. And none of those consequences are apparent in the evidence. And that should bother somebody besides me. I mean, if you people had any rational integrity. Any at all. Okay, that's enough said. Fuck you people. Just disgusting.